Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the December 16th, 2019 final meeting of the year for the Michigan City Port Authority. And before I forget, I want to wish Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. And please be safe out there. Have a great time. First order of business is approval or correction of our last meeting's minutes. Do we have any comments? Do we have any corrections? Do we have any motions?
With them, I did read them, accepted them personally, and I recommend that we approve them.
Okay. We have a motion to approve minutes.
I second.
And we have a second. Unless there are any questions, we'll vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Comments from the public. Mr. Freeze, do you have anything for us?
Nothing.
All right. We have someone else in the audience today, Mr. Colin Hassinger from Edgewater, and he's here to help us answer questions concerning the bids that we're going to open right now. Mr. Joe Zachnoon is going to help us through those. So, this is for the 800 dock electrical project.
Correct.
You want to preamble this at all? Or you just want to wait?
The rough description is it's to replace some of the outdated electrical equipment on the 800 dock. In this, the actual wiring itself will remain because it's all under the concrete deck, but the equipment is all early 90s vintage. That's some of your oldest electrical equipment in all of Washington Park, and this is to replace that equipment both with current code compliant equipment, but also that includes ground fault protection to help with mitigate your guys' risk to stray current. Like I said, the wiring is going to remain, so there's still some risk with that, but the new equipment all has modern ground fault protection in it. And this contract is to furnish and install that equipment this spring, prior to May 17th for this year's season. So, be happy to answer any questions if you have any questions.
Yes, that was very good. Thank you. We're going to have Joe open up the bids, and we're going to have Mr. Manner walk us through any questions and answers and where we want to go from here on the bids. Okay, Joe, if you go ahead, please, and then
certainly.
Bruce, if you'll handle it after that.
Looks like we've got three bidders. The first is from MB Electric Inc. of LaPorte, Indiana.
What was the name again?
MB Electric Inc. MB Electric bids, total base bid price $79,675. The second bidder is Marcus Electric Inc. of Michigan City, Indiana. And Marcus Electric's bid, total base bid price, $97,563. And the final bid is from XL Industrial Services, Inc. You may know them as KB Electric of LaPorte, Indiana. And KB Electric bids $97,896. And those are our 3 bids.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Yes, I'd like to know if we've ever been familiar with MB Electric here. They seem to have the lowest bid, and we usually do go with the lowest bid. Does anybody have any experience with them? Does anybody know anything about them?
Yeah,
Sam, would you know?
We use them a lot.
Yeah, you use them a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Colin's available to answer any questions also, please.
Yep. Nope. Tim has it covered. MB Electric is all of these vendors have performed work for the Port Authority in the past, and MB Electric is currently your annual maintenance electrician. So
Okay.
Tim has checked for faults and performs maintenance on your electrical equipment most seasons.
I have a question for Tim in regards to you.
Sure.
MB is the one that set us up in this program in the very beginning, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So he's been with us for, 4 years, 5 years
Oh, yeah, at least.
on the ESD thing? Okay.
Well, it would seem. Any other questions? Any other comments about this? If not, I would. You're looking at a difference of over $20,000 versus the other 2 bids that we have here. I would like to make a motion that we go with NMB Electrical for $79,675.
I second that motion.
We have a motion to approve the MB Electric bid and a second. Any questions? Danny?
Maybe Mr. Collins probably want to add to yours if all their paperwork is in line and
Right.
Well, yeah,
Probably
that's
should have suggested.
if you need to add
Right.
that to it.
Legal and operational concerns. So it's just Mr. Hessinger and pending that. We good?
Is that what you had?
Mr. Secretary, you writing that all down?
Mr. Secretary.
Sounds good. Any other questions on the 800 dock bidding process?
Maybe just real quick, I think Colin
Sure.
covered it, but the deadline for completion is May 17th?
I'm
I
sorry,
think
April. I
substantial
misspoke.
completion.
Oh, you missed, okay.
Yes,
That-
4/17/20.
There's a deadline for
Correct.
completion.
Yep, that's a substantial completion deadline, well before the tournament season.
Yeah. That was a,
Thank you.
Sorry if I misspoke previously.
that's a good question, Dan. I've been so excited to move this forward and get it going that I had overlooked asking that question. Thank you. All right, any other questions? We're going to move forward with the vote. Okay, all those in favor of accepting this bid of $79,675 from MB Electric for this project, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Do it like we did last time.
Yeah.
You'll scan it?
I'll scan it.
Okay.
You guys take your time.
Do you know if anybody else has checks in there?
Not that I'm aware of. Okay, just this one. Okay, and that's still inclusive in here, right?
Yeah, I didn't take it out.
Perfect. Okay, good. I'll make sure that gets tracked. I'm actually going to separate it and leave it with Tim.
Okay, nice.
Thank you, Colin.
Okay. Okay. Tim will coordinate to make sure the operations and the legal business on that bid is taken care of and move forward as necessary. Seeing no one else from the public, we'll go forward on our agenda. A report from the harbor master.
All right. Larson Danielson continues to work on the 200 dock project. They're planning to work next week, including half a day on the 24th, and then after Christmas as well. Currently, they have it open to just about halfway up the 200 dock, so they're making pretty good progress. We moved the remainder of the lumber out there and staged it for them, and then took our barge back, so they're good for the time being. We were worried about any ice that might form over the next 2 weeks when we're not here. So weather dependent, we'll pick up the timber they're pulling off there, but they have all the new stuff there that they need, and they can stack the old stuff on the finger piers as they take the new stuff. So that seems to be going pretty good. Other than that, the Christmas lights are in full swing. If you drive down through the park, they did quite a nice job this year. And I'll answer any questions beyond that.
Any questions for the harbor master? I do want to thank the harbor master and the staff for all the work they've done this year. You've worked well with the board again, and we've accomplished quite a bit. I don't know of anything major that we've left behind that hasn't been started. So I just wanted to say thank you. Mrs. Palicki is not here tonight.
I have one thing from her.
Harbor Master is going to tell us what that is.
So you'll find in your pile of papers a calendar, and marked in red are the meeting dates for 2020 per Mary Ann.
All right. Any questions for Tim on admin? Any questions? Moving on. Mr. Garrett is not here tonight for budget and finance. And Mr. Banner, I would not worry he wasn't going to be here. Can you talk about?
I wasn't worried he wasn't going to be here either.
Okay, Jim, can you?
I can
have
cover.
Harbor Master talk about.
I can cover a few.
Okay.
So if you look on your register there, the first one, auto owners, we pay the entire year for our vehicle insurance. That's what that is. The next one, card member services, that's some odds and ends, but 4,100 of the 5,050 are additional jack stands. We had an increase in winter storage this year, and so we needed to get some more jack stands. And then if you go about halfway down, Laraco flooring, we're going to be replacing the floor out here in the lobby. We got some water in the office here Halloween, and so we're going to switch that out with a solid vinyl floor. So any addition, that's also why we put the sandbags out front, to help prevent, since the lake level is so high. And then of course the NIPSCO bill at $87.50 and 1 cent. And I didn't add those all up ahead of time, so I'm not sure how that compares to the $25,224 and 10 cents. But if anybody else has any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any questions for the harbor master concerning payment of our bills?
I move we pay our bills as they've been presented.
We have a motion to pay the bills. For the
I second.
And we have a second. I don't know who got that first, whether it's okay. Mrs. Meir. That's about 20,000 of the 25, roughly, those items he talked about. Okay, any questions? Okay, all those in favor of paying the bills as posted, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Anything else? Okay, Mr. Haynes, claims and insurance?
I just have one question. Maybe Tim can help me with it. When we pay our insurance, do we pay it in one lump sum?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when does that payment go out? Beginning of the year?
I'll probably take it down there tomorrow, since we just approved it tonight.
What about the other insurance for
Oh, the rest of it?
Yeah. Or do we pay that in payments?
I think maybe that's in payments. The auto insurance is all one,
yes.
but the rest of it, I'm not sure. I can find out for you.
Okay.
But
that's it.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions for Mr. Haynes? Okay. Port operations, personnel, marine policy, myself. I don't have anything new Well, we are going to talk about, I could talk just for a second. Mr. Zach Noon's going to talk more about this, but at our last meeting, we talked about a refund policy on the voters, and we've had a meeting about a week or so ago. I can't remember exact date, and talked about after discussing with our attorney, discussing what we felt should be a good remedy. Mr. Zach Noon has put together a preliminary report, and we'll pass that out when he does his report. But the idea there is, I'd like you to read this over the next couple of weeks or so. When we get back together, we'll make changes as needed and get something approved. And I think it'll be self-explanatory after, or pretty much explained after Mr. Zach Noon gives his report. But that's all I have on the operational part. John?
At that meeting, we discussed a lot of stuff. If we had insurance for such a loss, if there was other things that insurance would cover for something along that line, and the high water level and the docks are not covered. So it'd be a loss of income for the Port Authority if we have to give refunds.
I didn't know that.
And the cost of the insurance, there wasn't even any insurance available for some of that things we
Right.
talked about.
Yeah.
Yes, we had our insurance rep here at that meeting. Hey, we can get into that in more discussions if you don't mind when Mr. Zach Noon gives his report, if you would.
Okay.
I'd like to have him go over and talk about the preliminaries. Unless anybody has any questions for me, I'm going to move on. Mr. Messina, voter communication special event.
I have nothing to report.
Anything from Mr. Messina? Any questions for him? Mr. Manor, master planning, special projects, park liaison.
I had nothing to report on master planning special projects. I wasn't able to make the park board meeting. If Mr. Freeze thinks there's anything we should know, maybe he could enlighten us.
If there was anything, Jeremy or Shannon would have contacted.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Moving on. Again, Mrs. Beer.
Marianne and I spoke about looking into whether or not we would stay members of the Chamber of Commerce. Right. Yes, and during our discussion, I gave her some input as to some pros as to why I think we should, but it will ultimately be up to the board whether or not, you want to. I did mention that I do believe you have a big potential clientele audience with some of the big companies around town and some of the new investors that are coming into Michigan City, and that the Port Authority is able to actually, since you're members, to send out letters to fellow members regarding what the Port Authority has to offer and your boat slip fees and everything like that, because some of them, maybe with a little progging may be interested in becoming slip holders. The other reason is I feel that with the activity, down the pike regarding projects and the master plan for the lakefront would be another reason as to why. And the third is that the fee is minimal. So that those are my reasonings.
To keep it up?
To keep.
So that's your recommendation?
Mm-hmm. And once again, I want to stress that maybe the Port Authority members would be interested in, contacting those potential clients because there is a lot of new activity in Michigan City regarding businesses and investors, and they may become slip holders. So, and their fellow members, if they do become, and as a member, you can solicit the fellow members, regarding what the Port Authority has to offer.
Okay.
But ultimately, of course, it would be the members' decision, the group, once you decide.
Bruce?
I personally don't think it's the members' decision. I don't think it's a board decision to be made. This is part of advertising and public relations.
Okay.
You have a budget for advertising and public relations.
Mm-hmm.
If you can afford it in your budget and that's what you want, I think that's what you should get. That's my opinion.
Well, that was my sell for it, and I do recall that the board wanted me to come back with some reasoning as to why. So those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Manor. I think it's all within budgeted money, and if you want to move forward, I know there's some disagreement on that, but I can support that real easily, and I see some positive nods of the head. So I believe this is an operational. It's a harbor master question. So go ahead, Tim. Renew. Any major concerns on that? We'll deal with it next year. For, as I say, minimal amount of money. Okay.
And that's it.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. I know there are good reasons back and forth on that, but now we've made the decision. We're moving forward. Attorney's report. Mr. Zachnew, we have a couple things I'd like you to do. We talked about them in advance, and that is the refund amendment that you're passing out. And then after your report is finished, we have election of officers that you're going to be doing.
Yeah, as Mr. Haynes touched on, we did have our insurance agent here when we met. I think it was a couple of Fridays ago. And the reason we don't have any coverage for loss of income in the event that the lake level were to rise to a point where we wouldn't be able to accommodate boats is because it's not a covered peril. So essentially it would be considered a flood if the lake levels rose too high, and we don't have flood insurance. He also told us that the only likely place we would be able to find such coverage would be on the Lloyd's of London market. And his belief is that the premium would be prohibitively expensive if such insurance would even be available. So if the lake level rises and there's a loss of business income, we are not covered. But what we did decide was that conditions could be such with the lake levels high that even if the slips themselves are not underwater, it may result in the power having to be turned off. And while that might be fine during the day, at night, we're going to have a dark marina. And a dark marina and high lake levels is something that could lead to potentially significant liability. So the concern is that if it's no power and or high lake levels such that the docks themselves are underwater, we can't have slip holders out there. It's clearly an unsafe condition, and we would be potentially courting serious liability. So the proposed amendment to the rules and regulations addressing refunds would maintain what we currently have, which is the $200 deposit will remain non-refundable, and we will continue to give refunds on a prorated basis between April 1st and June 1st for any reason. But after June 1st, then we would consider refunds if the harbor master determines, or the harbor master's designee determines, the conditions are unsafe for usage of a slip. In that circumstance, we would provide three options for a slip holder. And the first one would be that they could store the vessel with the Port Authority at summer storage rates and apply the remaining slip license fee to the storage fees. Two, if they are receiving a prorated refund. Now, if the well, the first thing we would do is we would try to find him another slip. If we've got a slip available, then the one that is safe, where we have power and it's not underwater, we would try to accommodate them and move them into another slip. Then the second option would be they could apply whatever remains of the prorated refund to summer storage. If, however, they elect the refund, then if they don't want to store, they want to take their boat somewhere else, then we will give a prorated refund. What we've recommended is that if the slip holder elects the prorated refund, they've got to move their vessel within 10 days of making that election. The prorated refund would be based on the number of days that remain. So say the season is 120 days and 45 days have elapsed, then they'll get, what would it be, 75 days left. So it would be 70, well, I'm not that good at math, but it would be like 75 of 120. So whatever that calculates out. We wouldn't do it by a monthly basis. It would be on a daily basis. And we would retain the right in an emergency to move any vessel. So basically what it would provide is, as written out here, I'm not going to read it because anybody can read it here, but this is the proposed amendment to the general information in the Port Authority's rules and regulations as to refunds.
Okay. Go ahead, Sam. You have a question?
Joe, what you have here is the entire program, a part of which exists.
Right.
Summarize for us the new stuff.
Well, the new stuff is that after June 1st, we will consider refunds on a prorated basis if the harbor master or the harbor master's designee determines that a slip is unsafe. And it could be unsafe for any number of reasons. The two primary reasons are the power has to be shut off because of high lake levels. As I said, that would lead to, at night, you've got a dark marina. If that's coupled with high lake levels to the point where the water is covering the slips, so that people are walking along and they're sloshing around in water, we don't want that circumstance. So in a circumstance such as that, where no power, darkness, and our docks covered in water, we essentially have to shut down those docks. And in that circumstance, we want to afford our slip holders an ability to either move to a safe slip so that they stay here, or if there are no safe slips available, then give them the option of storing their boat here at summer storage rates. And so they could apply the slip license fee to the summer storage. If they don't want to store and there are no slips available for them that are safe, then we would give them a prorated refund. But they would have to move the vessel out within 10 days of electing to take the prorated refund. And again, the proration would be based on the number of days that have elapsed in the season and the number of days that remain. And then we would just say in this policy that we reserve the right, in the case of an emergency, to move any vessel for any reason.
Okay. Now, in terms of the storage option, we're really not prepared for that. We're physically not prepared for that.
That's right.
Yeah. That's just one. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the whole point is that once we adopt whatever this program is, we're not finished with this project. We got to figure out what we're going to do if, in the event that people do want to stay in dry storage for a part of the year.
Right. There's already some that do it anyway for other reasons.
Yeah.
The question comes in is how many would want to do that?
I understand.
And how much space it would take. Yeah. So we'd have to give that some thought.
And that is a good point. We should probably add to this, subject to availability. I mean, we clearly could have more people wanting to store.
If we had a high water emergency, there's no way that Tim and his crew could fabricate a whole bunch of ground racks and cradles in time to to satisfy that new customer demand.
Well, most of those on the 4, 5, and 6 we put on jack stands.
Yeah. But we don't have the jack stands yet.
Well, we do have some. We just
Yeah.
picked some up. Yeah.
The whole point is, if available, I think is
Right.
a good part of that language, Joe.
And I've written that in.
Okay. Any other comments, questions right now? I have a couple when we're all done. A couple of things that Joe mentioned, I just see if I can clarify. You talked about if you're electing to take a refund, we're asking that you get your boats out within 10 days. That's not because we want to be mean. It's because if the high water level is such that it's dangerous to be on there, it's going to interfere with the safety of your boat, and we need to get it. Somebody needs to get it out of there. So that's the whole point of that. And really, probably worst case is we're looking at docks 4, 5, and 6. We could turn the electricity off separately on each dock. So the chances are everything going probably not that high, but it's a possibility that we could have significant problems on 4, 5, and 6. The others are significantly higher, and so I think the draft seems to cover most things. I'd really like to have everybody review this, bring it back. Let's talk about it at the next couple board meetings until we're happy with it, and then we'll get it approved and move forward. I don't think we're in a big hurry. We're talking December now. If we could have it something approved by the end of January, I think we're in good shape. Any comments or questions on that?
I have a question for you, Joe. You mentioned that we wouldn't have insurance if we had a business loss or an income loss. What about, well, I guess that would cover, no, that wouldn't cover income. What about damage to property loss? I mean, business and income doesn't really cover that. I mean, in other words, like I was just talking to him, we had some water come in and damaged our floor in here. Mm-hmm. Would we have insurance for that?
I don't recall what we were told on that. If it's considered a flood, I don't think we have insurance for that.
No, we don't have flood insurance.
Yeah, we don't have flood insurance. That's a FEMA type policy.
Yeah.
And it's not covered within our policy. Okay. So we wouldn't have coverage.
Okay.
And I think similarly, I believe we were told that if there were some damage to our equipment or to our facilities because of the flood, I don't think we're covered for that either.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a pretty good discussion on that with Charlie King. He actually, from my point of view, he actually made it a point to let us know of those kind of things. That this is a flood. This is kind of like the natural disaster type thing, and normal insurance doesn't cover stuff like that. So I think those of us who were at the meeting were pretty convinced that it wasn't available. Even we talked about damage to the docks, and I remember Charlie saying, the docks are not covered. That's flood. So, all right. Danny, yes.
Maybe just a thought. Do we want to put an option in if we have the problem, the situation, you cannot use your dock? I would say, hey, can I just apply it to next summer's slip rental? Is that?
Why not just take the money and just hold on to it and you write another check?
I hear what you're saying, but some people probably.
Sure.
I've already paid it out. Apply it to next year.
Well, I don't know. I don't know why we couldn't consider that, but I don't think, do we need to write that into the policy at this point? I think Tim and Mary Ann might want to think about that.
I'd want to ask her about the accounting on that.
Yeah.
Well, I think you might want to check on the State Board of Accounts on that too, Tim.
Right. Because I'm not sure we can
hold money.
Do that.
I don't think you can take money in advance any more than you can spend money in advance.
Right.
Dan, why don't you hold that? Think about it and bring it up again when Mary Ann's available and Tim has talked about it.
Thank you.
But I don't think I'd like to put that into regulations make something hard and fast like that. Just personal. Any other questions? Okay. Anything else on your attorney's report?
Not on the attorney's report, but do you want to do the election now?
Yes. That's the last thing. Is there any old business? I'd like to have the election be the last thing of the night. Do we have any old business we want to take care of? I don't know of any. Okay, no old business. Phil, do you have any questions up towards the end? Do you have any comments for us?
Nothing except what you said about FEMA is correct. They're a stickler on that flood insurance.
Yeah.
Insurance companies in general are. So it'd be worth looking into. But I'm not sure. If it's declared a flood, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, FEMA is for when you're in a floodplain. In other words, where you're normally on dry land and it becomes inundated with water, it floods. But as Charlie pointed out, we're a marina. We're supposed to be underwater. So
It's true.
that's why he thought it would be very difficult for us to get insurance for high lake water levels.
All right. Okay, the last thing I have on the agenda for the year is the election for officers for next year. And Mr. Zach Noon is going to conduct that whole operation. Sir, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, the nominating committee of Mr. Johns, Mr. Manor, and Mrs. Meir have slated a number of candidates for president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. Mr. Johns has advised me that the nominating committee has nominated the following candidates: for president, Sam Ferguson; for vice president, Bruce Manor; for treasurer, Aaron Garrett; and for secretary, John Haynes. Indiana Code Section 8-10-5-5G requires that the directors shall elect these officers. This is the statutorily required election. To conduct the election, I'm calling for a vote of the directors to approve or disapprove the slate of officers as nominated by the nominating committee. And again, nominated for president, Mr. Ferguson; for vice president, Mr. Manor; for treasurer, Mr. Garrett; and for secretary, Mr. Haynes. If you approve the election of the candidates slated by the nominating committee, then please respond with aye. If you disapprove of the election of the candidates slated by the nominating committee, then please respond with nay. I will now call the roll. Mr. Ferguson.
I'd like to vote last.
Okay. Mr. Garrett is not present. Mr. Haynes.
Nay.
Mr. Manor.
Aye.
Mrs. Meir.
Aye.
Mr. Messina.
Nay.
Mr. Johns.
Aye.
We have 2 ayes
I get to
and
vote
2 nays.
The president
Mr.
gets-
Ferguson.
yes.
Aye. There are 3 ayes and 2 nays. The directors have approved the election of the candidates slated by the nominating
There are
committee.
4.
We have 4 ayes, I'm sorry, and 2 nays. My mistake. So the directors have approved the election of the candidates slated by the nominating committee.
All right. I have no more business to bring forward to the board. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
We have a motion, a second to adjourn. Next meeting, January 13th, 2020. Thank you all.